The dust devils swirled across the wooden floorboards of the town hall in Fort Bowie, Arizona, carrying with them the whispers that had followed Clara Whitmore since she was 12 years old. And tonight, on this sweltering August evening in 1878, those whispers were about to become loud enough to break her heart. Clara stood at the edge of the dance floor, her gloved hands gripping the punch cup, so tightly she thought the glass might shatter. The lantern strung across the rafters cast a warm glow over the assembled crowd, and the fiddle player was tuning his instrument while the pianist ran through a few scales. The annual summer dance was the social event of the season in Fort Bowie, a small territorial town nestled in the southeastern corner of Arizona, where the Army fort kept watch over the Apache Pass. Clara had spent 2 weeks sewing her dress, a modest blue cotton with white lace at the collar, and her mother had helped her arrange her chestnut hair in an elaborate updo that made her feel almost pretty. Almost. The accident had happened 6 years ago when a spooked horse had kicked her left leg, shattering the bone in 3 places. The town doctor had done his best, but the leg had healed crooked, leaving Clara with a pronounced limp that made every step a careful calculation. Her father, who ran the general store, had assured her that it made no difference to who she was inside, but Clara knew better. She saw it in the eyes of the young men who looked away when she entered a room, heard it in the sudden silence that fell when she approached a group of girls her own age. "Well, would you look at that?" a voice said from behind her, loud enough to carry. "Clara Whitmore actually came to the dance. I suppose she thinks someone might actually ask her to step onto the floor." Clara did not turn around. She recognized the voice of Margaret Sullivan, the banker's daughter, whose golden curls and perfect figure had captured the attention of every eligible bachelor within 50 miles. Margaret traveled with a pack of similarly beautiful girls who seemed to have made it their mission to ensure Clara understood her place in the social hierarchy. "Margaret, hush," another girl said, but there was laughter in her voice. "She might hear you. So what if she does? I am just stating facts. Can you imagine trying to dance with that leg? She would step all over her partner's feet, assuming she could find one desperate enough to ask." The words hit Clara like physical blows, each one landing with precision. She set down her punch cup on the nearest table and turned toward the door, determined to leave with whatever dignity she had left. Her mother would be disappointed, but her mother was not the one who had to stand here and endure this humiliation. "The music is about to start," a third voice chimed in. "I bet she does not even know how to dance. Have you ever seen her at one of these events? She just stands in the corner like a piece of furniture." Clara's vision blurred with tears as she made her way toward the exit, her limp more pronounced as she hurried. The wooden floor seemed to amplify each uneven step, announcing her departure to everyone in the room. She had almost reached the door when the fiddle struck up the opening notes of a lively reel, and the sound of boots on wood told her that couples were taking their positions. The night air hit her face like a benediction, dry and hot but infinitely preferable to the suffocating atmosphere inside. Clara leaned against the wooden post of the porch, taking deep breaths and willing herself not to cry. She had known this would happen. She had told her mother that coming to the dance was a mistake, but her mother had insisted, saying that Clara could not hide away forever. "Excuse me, miss." The voice was deep and unfamiliar, with a slight drawl that marked the speaker as someone from Texas or perhaps further south. Clara wiped quickly at her eyes and turned to find a man standing a few feet away, his hat in his hands. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against a clean white shirt. His face was tanned from hours in the sun, with strong features that might have been carved from the same red rock that dotted the Arizona landscape. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes, even in the dim light from the town hall windows, were a striking shade of blue. "I apologize if I startled you," he said, taking a step closer. "I am looking for the young lady in the blue dress with the white lace collar. I was told she came out here." Clara stared at him, confused. "I am wearing a blue dress with white lace." The man smiled, and it transformed his entire face, chasing away the serious expression and revealing a warmth that made Clara's breath catch. "Then I found who I was looking for. My name is Benjamin Brooks, but most people call me Ben. I just rode in from Texas about a week ago, hired on at the Double R Ranch about 10 miles south of here." "Clara Whitmore," she managed, still not understanding why this stranger was talking to her. "Miss Whitmore, I came out here to ask you something, but I wanted to do it away from all those people inside." Ben shifted his weight, and Clara realized with surprise that he seemed nervous. "I heard what those girls said to you in there. I was standing near the door, just arrived, and their words carried. I want you to know that they are wrong, every one of them." "You do not need to make me feel better," Clara said quietly. "I know what I am. I know what I look like when I walk. May I tell you what I see when I look at you?" Ben asked, and without waiting for an answer, he continued. "I see a young woman who had the courage to come to a dance, even though she knew it might be difficult. I see someone who carries herself with dignity despite the cruelty of others. I see a person who has known suffering and survived it, which makes her stronger than most of the people in that room." Clara felt fresh tears threatening, but these were different from the ones that had driven her from the hall. "Why are you saying these things to me? You do not even know me." "Because I want to know you," Ben said simply. "And because I came to this dance hoping to find someone worth dancing with, and I believe I have found her." He extended his hand, palm up, in invitation. "Miss Clara Whitmore, may I have every dance tonight?" The words hung in the air between them, impossible and wonderful. Clara looked at his outstretched hand, then back up at his face, searching for any sign of mockery or pity. She found neither. What she saw in his eyes was sincerity and something else, something that looked almost like hope. "I cannot dance well," she said, needing him to understand. "My leg, it was broken years ago and it did not heal right. I will step on your feet and I will not be able to keep up with the faster songs." "Then we will dance the slow ones," Ben said. "And if you step on my feet, I will consider it an honor. These boots have been through worse, I promise you. I have been kicked by horses, stepped on by cattle, and once had a scorpion in my left boot for an entire morning before I realized it. Your feet will be a welcome change." Despite everything, Clara felt a smile tugging at her lips. "You had a scorpion in your boot." "I did. It was dead, fortunately, but I did not know that at the time. Made for a very nervous morning." Ben's smile widened. "So what do you say, Miss Whitmore? Will you give me the honor of every dance tonight? I should warn you that I am not much of a dancer myself. I am more accustomed to working cattle than waltzing, so we will likely make quite a pair stumbling around that floor together." Clara knew she should say no. She should protect herself from the inevitable disappointment when he realized what he had committed himself to. When the reality of dancing with a crippled girl became too much for him. But there was something in his eyes that made her want to take the risk to believe, just for one night, that maybe she could be like every other girl her age. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I would like that." Ben's face lit up with genuine pleasure, and he offered her his arm. "Then let us show them what a real partnership looks like." They walked back into the town hall together, and Clara felt every eye in the room turn toward them. Margaret Sullivan's mouth actually fell open when she saw Clara on Ben's arm, and several other girls stopped mid-conversation to stare. The fiddle was playing a waltz now, something slower and more romantic than the earlier reel, and Ben led Clara directly to the center of the dance floor. "Put your hand on my shoulder," he instructed gently, positioning her carefully. "And do not worry about your steps. Just follow my lead, and if you need to stop, just say so." Clara placed her hand on his broad shoulder, feeling the strength beneath the fabric of his shirt. His hand settled on her waist, warm and steady, while his other hand clasped hers. For a moment, they just stood there, and Clara became acutely aware of how close they were, how she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes and smell the faint scent of sage and leather that clung to him. Then they began to move, and Clara forgot about everything else. Ben was not an elegant dancer. It was true. His movements were a bit stiff, his timing occasionally off by a beat or two, but he was steady and patient, adjusting his pace to accommodate her uneven gait without making it obvious. When she stumbled slightly, his hand on her waist tightened just enough to keep her upright, and when she looked up at him in embarrassment, he was smiling down at her as if she had done something wonderful. "You are doing beautifully," he murmured. "I am barely managing to stay on my feet," Clara replied, but she was smiling now too. "That is one step above me most days," Ben said, spinning her gently. "I spend half my time face down in the dirt, getting thrown by horses who object to being told what to do. Why do you do it then?" "Ranch work, I mean." "Because I love it," Ben said without hesitation. "I love being outside under that big sky, working with animals that are honest about who they are. A horse does not pretend to be something it is not. If it is going to buck you off, you generally see it coming. I find that refreshing after growing up around people who smiled to your face while plotting behind your back." Clara understood that sentiment more than he could know. "Where did you grow up?" "Fort Worth, Texas." "My father was a shopkeeper, wanted me to take over the business, but I could not stand being cooped up inside all day. We had words about it when I turned 18 and I left to make my own way. That was 7 years ago now. Do you regret it, leaving your family?" Ben considered the question as they moved across the floor. "I regret the pain it caused my mother, who did not deserve to be caught in the middle, but I do not regret following my own path. A man has to be true to himself, even when it is difficult." The song ended, but before Clara could step away, another one started, this one a bit faster. She tensed, knowing she would not be able to keep up, but Ben simply adjusted his hold on her and continued dancing, slowing their movements so that they moved to their own rhythm rather than the music's. "I believe I asked for every dance," he reminded her. "That means you are stuck with me all night, Miss Whitmore." "Clara," she said. "Please call me Clara." "Clara," he repeated, and the way he said her name with that slight Texas drawl made something flutter in her chest. "And you can call me Ben, though I should warn you that my given name is actually Bartholomew. My mother had grand ambitions for me." "Bartholomew Brooks," Clara said, testing it out. "It sounds very distinguished." "It sounds like someone who should be wearing a suit and working in a bank, not mucking out stalls and mending fences. Ben suits me better." They danced through 3 more songs, and with each one, Clara felt herself relaxing more. Ben kept up a steady stream of conversation, telling her stories about his work at the Double R Ranch, about the longhorn cattle that were being driven up from Mexico, about the peculiarities of his fellow ranch hands. He made her laugh with his descriptions of his attempts to learn to rope cattle, which apparently involved more falling than actual roping. "I swear that lasso had a personal vendetta against me," he said, shaking his head. "Every time I threw it, it would somehow end up wrapped around my own legs instead of the cow's. The foreman finally took pity on me and gave me extra lessons after everyone else had gone to bed. I think he was afraid I would lasso myself to death if left unsupervised. But you learned eventually." Eventually being the key word. It took me 6 months before I could reliably rope a cow without causing some kind of disaster. Now I am actually pretty good at it, though I will never be as fast as some of the Mexican vaqueros who work with us. Those men are artists with a rope. As they swayed together, Clara noticed that the initial stares had died down, though she occasionally caught Margaret Sullivan glaring at them from across the room. Let her glare, Clara thought. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere, like she was not just the girl with the limp but a young woman who deserved to be seen and appreciated. "Can I ask you something?" Ben said after a while, his voice more serious now. "Of course." "Those girls who said those things about you, do they do that often?" Clara hesitated, not wanting to make herself sound pitiful. "Often enough. Margaret and her friends, they have never been particularly kind, but it is not just them. Most people in town have known me since I was a child, and they remember me before the accident. I think it is easier for them to see me as someone to pity or avoid rather than as I actually am now. That must be lonely." The simple observation, spoken without pity or judgment, touched something deep inside Clara. "It is," she admitted. "My parents are wonderful, and they have never treated me as less than whole, but they cannot be my friends or my entire world. I want to have experiences, to meet people, to maybe one day have what they have." "What is that?" "A partnership," Clara said, thinking of how her parents worked together in the store, how they finished each other's sentences and communicated with just a look. "Someone who sees you completely and chooses you anyway." Ben was quiet for a moment, his hand tightening slightly on her waist. "I think that is what everyone wants deep down. The lucky ones find it." "Are you looking for it?" Clara asked, surprised by her own boldness. "I think I might have just found it," Ben said softly, and when Clara looked up at him, the expression in his eyes made her heart race. They were interrupted by the band taking a break, and the spell between them broke slightly. Ben led Clara off the dance floor toward the refreshment table, keeping her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. She was acutely aware of the eyes following them, of the whispered conversations that started up in their wake. "Would you like some punch?" Ben asked, already reaching for a cup. "Please." Clara accepted the glass gratefully, realizing how warm she had become during the dancing. The punch was sweet and cold, flavored with lemons that had been brought in from California at considerable expense. "There you are, Brooks." A voice boomed across the room, and a moment later a heavy hand clapped Ben on the shoulder. Clara turned to see a stocky man with a full beard and a weathered face grinning at them. "I told you this dance would be worth coming to, did I not?" "You did, Jake," Ben agreed. "Clara, this is Jake Morrison, the foreman at the Double R. Jake, this is Miss Clara Whitmore." "Pleased to meet you, Miss Whitmore," Jake said, tipping his hat. "I have been trying to get this stubborn cowboy out of the bunkhouse for weeks now. He works too hard and does not socialize enough." "I am glad to see he finally took my advice." "I work exactly the right amount," Ben protested. "You are just used to the other hands who find any excuse to slack off." "Ha, the boy has a point." Jake turned his attention to Clara. "Your father runs the general store, does he not?" "I have been in a few times. Good man, fair prices." "He is," Clara said, warming to the friendly foreman. "If you ever need anything special ordered, just let him know. He has contacts in Tucson and can usually get items within a few weeks." "I will keep that in mind." "Well, I will leave you two alone. The music is about to start up again, and I see a certain widow lady who might be persuaded to dance with an old cowboy like me." Jake winked and wandered off toward a woman in her 40s who was standing near the windows. "He seems nice," Clara observed. "He is. Probably the best foreman I have ever worked for. Tough but fair, and he genuinely cares about the men under his command. It makes all the difference." Ben set down his empty cup. Speaking of the music starting again, I believe I have a promise to keep. Every dance, remember." They returned to the floor, and this time Clara noticed that other couples seemed to be giving them space, creating a small bubble around them. She was not sure if it was out of respect or because they did not want to get too close to her, but with Ben's arm around her, she found she did not care. The night wore on, and they danced every single dance just as Ben had promised. Sometimes they talked, sharing stories about their childhoods and their dreams for the future. Other times they were silent, content to move together in a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. Clara learned that Ben was 25, that he had a younger sister back in Texas whom he missed terribly, that his favorite food was his mother's apple pie, and that he had once considered becoming a school teacher before deciding that the classroom life was not for him. Ben learned that Clara was 19, that she loved to read and often borrowed books from the wife of the fort commander who had an extensive library, that she helped her father with the store's accounting because she had a head for numbers, and that she dreamed of one day traveling to San Francisco to see the ocean. "I have never seen the ocean either," Ben admitted, "but I have heard it is something spectacular. Maybe someday we could see it together." The casual way he said it, as if there would naturally be a future that included both of them, made Clara's pulse quicken. She wanted to ask if he meant it, if this was more than just a kind gesture on his part, but she was afraid of breaking whatever magic had settled over them. As midnight approached, and the band began to play the final song of the evening, Ben drew Clara a bit closer. They had been dancing for hours, and her leg was aching fiercely, but she would have kept going all night if she could. The song was a slow waltz, something romantic and bittersweet, and around them other couples were holding each other tightly, reluctant to let the evening end. "Thank you," Clara said softly, "for tonight, for everything. You gave me something I thought I would never have." "What is that?" "A perfect evening. A night where I felt normal and valued and seen." Ben stopped dancing right there in the middle of the floor and cupped her face in his hands. "Clara Whitmore, you are the furthest thing from normal, and I mean that as the highest compliment. You are extraordinary. You are brave and intelligent and beautiful, and any man who cannot see that is a fool. I am the luckiest person in this room because I got to spend this evening with you." "Ben," Clara whispered, not sure what she was asking for but knowing she needed something more. He seemed to understand. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and sweet and filled with promise, and Clara felt like the entire world had narrowed down to just the two of them, to the gentle pressure of his lips on hers and the feeling of his hands cradling her face like she was something precious. When they broke apart, Clara saw that several people were staring at them, including Margaret Sullivan, whose face was twisted with jealousy and disbelief. Clara did not care. Let them stare. Let them talk. She had found something real and true, and no amount of gossip could diminish that. The song ended, and the band began to pack up their instruments. Couples started to drift toward the door, calling out good nights and making plans for the following week. Ben kept his arm around Clara's waist, supporting her as they walked, and she was grateful because her leg was trembling with fatigue. Outside, the night air had cooled slightly, though it was still warm by most standards. The stars overhead were brilliant, uncountable points of light scattered across the black canvas of sky. Clara's parents were waiting by their wagon, and when they saw her approaching with Ben, her mother's face broke into a smile. "Mama, Papa, this is Benjamin Brooks," Clara said. "Ben, these are my parents, William and Sarah Whitmore." "Sir, madam," Ben said, shaking hands with William and nodding respectfully to Sarah. "I am pleased to meet you. You have a wonderful daughter." "We think so," William said, his eyes assessing Ben carefully. Clara knew her father was protective of her, worried that someone might take advantage of her loneliness. But whatever he saw in Ben's face seemed to satisfy him because his expression softened. "You are the new hand at the Double R." "Yes, sir. Arrived about a week ago from Texas. I am still learning the lay of the land, but I like it here. It is good country if you can handle the heat and the occasional Apache trouble," William said. "The fort keeps things relatively peaceful, but a man still needs to keep his wits about him." "I will remember that, sir." Sarah, who had been watching the exchange with amusement, spoke up. "Would you like to join us for Sunday dinner tomorrow, Mr. Brooks? We usually eat around 2 o'clock after church services." Ben looked at Clara, who nodded eagerly. "I would like that very much, madam." "Thank you for the invitation. Then we will see you tomorrow." Sarah climbed into the wagon and William moved to help Clara up, but Ben was already there, his hands gentle as he lifted her onto the seat. "Good night, Clara," he said quietly. "Sleep well." "Good night, Ben." As the wagon pulled away, Clara turned to watch him standing there in the dusty street, his hat in his hands, watching them go. She could still feel the imprint of his kiss on her lips, still hear the words he had spoken to her throughout the night. For the first time in years, she went to bed feeling hopeful about the future. The next morning dawned bright and hot, and Clara woke early to help her mother prepare the Sunday dinner. They were having roast chicken with potatoes and carrots, along with fresh bread and an apple pie that Sarah had made the day before. As they worked together in the kitchen, Sarah kept glancing at her daughter with a knowing smile. "He seems like a good man," she finally said. "He is," Clara agreed, checking on the chicken in the oven. "Mama, did you know? Did you have any idea that the night would turn out like that?" "I hoped," Sarah admitted. "I have been praying for you to find someone who could see past your limp to the remarkable woman underneath. When I saw you two together last night, the way he looked at you, I knew my prayers had been answered. It was just one night. We barely know each other. Sometimes that is all it takes. Your father and I knew after our third conversation that we would spend our lives together. When it is right, you just know." Clara wanted to believe that, wanted to think that the connection she felt with Ben was real and lasting. But she was also afraid to hope too much, afraid that the harsh light of day would reveal last night as nothing more than a beautiful illusion. Church services were held in the same town hall where the dance had taken place, and Clara sat with her parents in their usual pew, trying to focus on the sermon. But her mind kept wandering to Ben, wondering if he was thinking about her, if he was as eager for 2 o'clock to arrive as she was. After the service, Margaret Sullivan approached her outside, flanked by her usual group of friends. "Well, Clara," Margaret said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "you certainly caused quite a stir last night." "Did I?" Clara kept her voice neutral, refusing to be baited. "That cowboy, what was his name? Benjamin something. He was quite attentive. Of course, he is new in town and probably does not know many people yet. I am sure once he settles in and sees what other options are available, he will realize his mistake." One of Margaret's friends giggled, but another girl, a quiet redhead named Alice whom Clara had always thought seemed nicer than the rest, frowned at Margaret. "That was unkind," Alice said softly. "I am just being realistic," Margaret said with a shrug. "Clara knows I am right. Men like that do not end up with girls like her." Before Clara could respond, her mother appeared at her elbow. "Clara, your father is ready to go. We should head home to finish preparing dinner." Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes were steely as she looked at Margaret. "I would think that a young woman of your upbringing would know better than to speak cruelly about others, Miss Sullivan. Your mother was raised better than that, and I am certain she would be disappointed to hear how you conduct yourself." Margaret's face flushed, and she turned on her heel without another word, her friends trailing after her. Alice lingered for a moment, giving Clara an apologetic smile before following the group. "Thank you," Clara said to her mother as they walked toward the wagon. "That girl needs to learn some manners," Sarah said firmly. "And more importantly, you need to stop letting her words affect you. She is jealous, plain and simple, and jealous people often lash out at those they perceive as threats. How could I possibly be a threat to Margaret Sullivan? Because you have something she does not. You have substance, character, and now you have caught the attention of a man who seems to value those qualities. Girls like Margaret rely solely on their looks, and they panic when they realize that is not enough for everyone." Back at home, Clara changed out of her church dress into something more practical and returned to the kitchen to help with the final preparations. At precisely 2 o'clock, there was a knock on the door, and when William opened it, Ben stood there looking freshly scrubbed and nervous, his dark hair still damp from washing. Come in," William said, stepping aside. "Make yourself comfortable." Ben had brought wildflowers, which he presented to Sarah with a shy smile. "I picked these this morning on the way into town. I hope they are acceptable." "They are lovely," Sarah assured him, finding a vase to put them in. "Clara, why do not you show Ben the sitting room while your father and I finish up in here?" Clara led Ben into the small but comfortable room where her family spent their evenings. The walls were lined with books, and a worn but cozy sofa sat beneath the window. Ben examined the book titles with interest, pulling out a volume of Shakespeare's sonnets. "You like poetry?" he asked. "I do. That one was a gift from Mrs. Harrison at the fort. She says Shakespeare understood the human heart better than anyone. May I?" Ben opened the book and flipped through the pages, stopping at one and reading aloud. "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date." His voice was soft but clear, and Clara felt her cheeks warming as he continued to read. When he finished the sonnet, he looked up at her. "That one made me think of you. I am not sure I am as lovely as a summer's day," Clara said, attempting to laugh it off. "You are lovelier," Ben said seriously. "And unlike summer, I hope you will not be temporary." Before Clara could respond, her mother called them to dinner. The meal was delicious, and the conversation flowed easily. Ben answered William's questions about his background and experience, spoke respectfully to Sarah about his mother back in Texas, and made Clara laugh with stories about ranch life that were edited to be appropriate for mixed company. "So you plan to stay on at the Double R?" William asked, passing the potatoes. "For the foreseeable future, yes, sir. The work is steady, the pay is fair, and I like the country. Jake Morrison is a good boss, and the ranch owner, Mr. Richardson, seems to be a decent man. I could do a lot worse." "Do you have ambitions beyond ranch work?" Sarah asked. "I do, eventually. I would like to have my own place someday, nothing huge but enough land to run a modest herd and maybe raise a few horses. I am good with horses, better than with cattle if I am being honest, but that is a long-term goal. For now, I am focused on learning everything I can and saving money." After dinner, while Sarah and William were occupied with clearing the table, Ben asked Clara if she would like to take a walk. The afternoon heat had eased slightly, and a breeze had picked up from the west. They strolled down the dusty main street of Fort Bowie, past the general store and the saloon, toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open desert. "I have been thinking about last night all day," Ben admitted. "I was worried that maybe in the light of day you would regret it." "Regret what?" "Dancing with me, letting me kiss you. I know I was presumptuous, and I do not want you to think I make a habit of kissing girls I have just met." "I do not regret any of it," Clara said firmly. "Ben, last night was the most wonderful night of my life." You made me feel things I thought I would never feel, and you did it without pity or hesitation. How could I regret that? Margaret Sullivan said something to you after church, did she not? Ben's voice had gone flat. I saw her approach you, saw the look on her face. She said what she always says, that you will realize you made a mistake, that someone like you does not end up with someone like me. Clara forced herself to meet his eyes. Is she right, Ben? Will you wake up one day and realize you could do better? Ben stopped walking and turned to face her fully. Clara, listen to me very carefully. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if we will work out or if we will face obstacles that prove too difficult to overcome. But what I do know, what I am absolutely certain of, is that meeting you was not a mistake. You are not some consolation prize or a charitable project. You are a woman I am genuinely interested in getting to know better, and I am hoping you feel the same way about me. I do, Clara whispered. Then let everyone else say what they want. We will know the truth. Ben took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. I do not have much to offer you right now. I am a ranch hand who lives in a bunkhouse and owns 2 horses, 3 changes of clothes, and a saddle. But I work hard, I save my money, and I have plans for the future. If you are willing to take a chance on me, I promise I will do everything in my power to be worthy of that chance. You are already worthy, Clara said, squeezing his hand. Ben, you gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. You gave me hope. They stood there in the fading afternoon light, 2 young people at the beginning of something neither of them fully understood, but both were willing to explore. When Ben finally walked Clara back to her house, he kissed her goodbye on the porch, a sweet, lingering kiss that promised more to come. Over the following weeks, Ben became a regular presence in Clara's life. He came to Sunday dinners, arrived at the general store on his days off to help William with heavy lifting, and took Clara on long walks around the fort and into the desert hills beyond. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing their dreams and fears, their past disappointments and future hopes. Clara learned that Ben had left Texas not just because of a disagreement with his father, but because he had fallen in love with a girl who had chosen wealth over affection, marrying a banker twice her age for security. The experience had left Ben wary of women who valued material things over character, which was part of why he had been drawn to Clara. She had nothing to prove and no pretenses to maintain. She was simply herself, honest and genuine. Ben learned that Clara's accident had not just affected her physically, but had changed her entire life trajectory. Before the injury, she had been outgoing and popular, with dreams of becoming a teacher or perhaps moving to a larger city. Afterward, she had withdrawn, convinced that her opportunities had been taken away along with her mobility. But lately, with Ben's encouragement, she had started to reconsider those old dreams. Why could you not still be a teacher? Ben asked one evening as they sat on the porch of the general store, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. You are smart, you love learning, and you are patient. Those are the exact qualities a good teacher needs. Who would hire me? Parents would worry that I could not manage a classroom, that I could not chase after unruly children or stand for long periods. Then prove them wrong. Start small, maybe offer tutoring to some of the younger children in town. Show people what you can do. Ben leaned back against the porch railing. Clara, you cannot let fear stop you from trying. I know that is easier said than done, but what is the worst that could happen? Someone says no. You have survived much worse than that. Clara considered his words. Mrs. Harrison mentioned that the fort is looking for someone to teach the officers' children. There are only 5 or 6 of them, and they have been doing lessons in a group with whoever is available. Maybe I could inquire about it. That is a perfect place to start, Ben encouraged. and I will be there cheering you on every step of the way." The following week, Clara approached Mrs. Harrison about the teaching position. The colonel's wife was delighted at the suggestion and arranged for Clara to meet with the parents. There was some initial hesitation, particularly from one captain who worried that Clara would not be able to maintain discipline, but Mrs. Harrison advocated strongly on Clara's behalf. Finally, they agreed to a trial period of 1 month. Clara threw herself into preparing lessons, creating a curriculum that covered reading, writing, arithmetic, and basic history. Ben helped her set up a small classroom in one of the unused buildings at the fort, building desks and a bookshelf from scrap lumber. Jake Morrison even donated some slate boards that had been sitting in storage at the ranch. The first day of class was terrifying. Clara arrived early, her lesson plans clutched in her shaking hands, convinced that the children would mock her limp or refuse to listen to her instructions. But the 5 children who showed up were polite and curious, ranging in age from 6 to 10. They settled into their seats and looked at her expectantly, waiting to see what this new teacher would do. Clara took a deep breath and began. She started with introductions, learning each child's name and something they were interested in. Then she launched into a reading lesson using a book of adventure stories that had the children hanging on every word. When one boy squirmed restlessly, she gave the class a break to run around outside before returning to mathematics. By the end of the first week, Clara knew she had found her calling. The children responded to her patient teaching style, and even the most reluctant student began to show progress. The parents were pleased with what their children were learning, and the initial trial period was extended indefinitely. Clara found herself waking up each morning excited to go to work, eager to see what the day would bring. Ben was thrilled with her success. "I told you," he said, hugging her tightly when she shared the news that her position had been made permanent. "You are a natural teacher. Those children are lucky to have you." "I am lucky to have them," Clara corrected. "And I am lucky to have you. None of this would have happened if you had not encouraged me to try." As fall arrived and the brutal heat of summer began to ease, Ben started talking more seriously about his future plans. He had been saving aggressively, setting aside most of his pay each month, and he had been scouting land in the area that might be suitable for a small ranch. Jake Morrison had offered to help him secure a loan when the time came, and several of the other ranch hands had expressed interest in helping him build if he promised to hire them on once he was established. "There is a piece of property about 15 miles west of here," Ben told Clara one Sunday afternoon as they rode out to look at it. He had borrowed a gentle mare from the Double R for Clara to ride, a patient horse who did not mind her rider's uneven balance. "It is only about 300 acres, but there is water from a creek that runs through the northern section, and the grazing is decent. I could run maybe 50 head of cattle and a dozen horses to start." They crested a rise, and the land spread out before them. It was beautiful in its stark way, all red rock and hardy scrub brush, with cottonwood trees marking the path of the creek. In the distance, mountains rose up purple and mysterious against the blue sky. "What do you think?" Ben asked anxiously. "I think it is perfect," Clara said honestly. "I can picture it, Ben. A house over there on that flat section where it would catch the morning sun. A barn and corrals near the creek. It would be a good life." "It could be our life," Ben said quietly, "if you want it to be." Clara turned to look at him, her heart pounding. "What are you asking me, Ben?" He dismounted and came to help her down from her horse, then kept his hands on her waist, looking down at her seriously. "I know we have only known each other for a few months, but Clara, I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your brilliant mind. I love the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, and the way you always see the best in people. I love how you have taken something that others saw as a limitation and refused to let it define you. Ben, Clara breathed, her eyes filling with tears. I do not have a ring yet, and I cannot offer you much right now. But I am asking you to wait for me, to give me a year to get this ranch started and make something of myself. And then, if you will have me, I want to marry you. I want to build that house with the morning sun and fill it with laughter and children and all the love I have to give. What do you say, Clara Whitmore? Will you take a chance on a cowboy with big dreams and an even bigger heart? Yes, Clara said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, of course, yes. I do not need you to wait a year or make something of yourself. You already are something wonderful, Ben Brooks, but I will wait as long as you need me to because I love you too, so much it terrifies me sometimes. Ben kissed her then, deep and passionate, pouring all of his feelings into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I am going to work harder than I have ever worked in my life to make this happen for us, he promised. You deserve everything, Clara, and I am going to give it to you. True to his word, Ben threw himself into preparing for their future. He continued working at the Double R while also spending every spare moment improving the land he planned to purchase. William Whitmore, who had become genuinely fond of Ben, helped him negotiate with the current landowner, using his business connections to secure a fair price. Jake Morrison co-signed the loan, vouching for Ben's character and work ethic. Meanwhile, Clara continued teaching and began saving money of her own. She started doing bookkeeping for some of the other businesses in town, using her mathematical skills to help merchants balance their accounts and manage their finances. The extra income went into a special fund she kept hidden in her room, money that would go toward furnishing their future home. The engagement was not officially announced, but word spread quickly through the small community. Most people were genuinely happy for them, having watched their relationship develop over the months. Even some of Margaret Sullivan's friends, including Alice, offered their congratulations. Margaret herself maintained a frosty silence, though Clara occasionally caught her staring at Ben with an expression of frustrated longing. Winter came to Arizona, which meant cooler temperatures but rarely any snow at their elevation. Ben worked on building a small house on the property, aided by Jake and several other ranch hands who volunteered their time. It was a modest structure, just 4 rooms, but it was sturdy and well built, with large windows to let in light and a fireplace for the occasional cold night. Clara visited the property whenever she could, bringing food for the workers and offering suggestions about the house's layout. She had decided that one of the rooms would serve as a small library and study, a place where she could prepare her lessons and Ben could manage the ranch's accounts. Another room would be a bedroom, a third would serve as kitchen and living space, and the fourth would be kept for future use. Future use, Ben repeated, his eyes twinkling. And what might that future use be? Clara blushed. I think you know what I am hoping for. Children, Ben said softly, pulling her close. I want that too. A whole house full of them if we are blessed. Boys who can help with the ranch work and girls who inherit their mother's intelligence and beauty. Or boys who inherit their father's kindness and girls who grow up to be strong and independent, Clara countered. Or both, Ben agreed, kissing the top of her head. As long as they are healthy and happy, I do not care. By the time spring arrived in 1879, the house was finished. The first cattle had been purchased, and Ben had officially left his position at the Double R to focus on his own ranch full-time. Jake had helped him recruit 2 reliable hands to help with the daily work, both young men eager to learn and willing to work hard for fair wages. Clara's teaching position had become a respected role in the community, and she had expanded her student base to include a few children from town, whose parents were willing to pay for quality education. She was making enough money to contribute significantly to the household expenses, which she knew would be important in the early years as they worked to make the ranch profitable. On a warm May morning, Clara and Ben were married in a simple ceremony at the fort's chapel. Mrs. Harrison had decorated the small building with wildflowers, and what seemed like the entire community turned out to witness the event. Clara wore a cream-colored dress that her mother had helped her sew, and Ben wore a new suit that Jake had insisted on buying as a wedding gift. William walked Clara down the aisle, his eyes suspiciously bright as he placed her hand in Ben's. Sarah wept openly in the front row, tears of joy for her daughter who had found such happiness. Even some of Margaret Sullivan's former friends were in attendance, though Margaret herself was notably absent. The chaplain from the fort performed the ceremony, speaking about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of partnership. When it came time for the vows, Ben's voice was strong and clear as he promised to love and cherish Clara for the rest of his days. Clara's voice trembled slightly, but her words were no less sincere as she pledged herself to him. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the chaplain said with a smile. "Ben, you may kiss your bride." And he did, tenderly and thoroughly, while their friends and family applauded and cheered. Clara felt like her heart might burst from happiness. A year ago, she had been standing alone at a dance, listening to cruel words and contemplating running away. Now she was married to the kindest, most wonderful man she had ever known, embarking on a life she had never dared to dream was possible. The reception was held at the town hall, the same place where they had first danced together. Someone had brought in a fiddler, and after they ate the feast that the community had contributed to, Ben led Clara onto the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. "May I have every dance tonight?" he asked, echoing his words from that first magical evening. "Every dance tonight and every night for the rest of our lives," Clara replied, and they swayed together as the music played and their future stretched out before them, bright and full of promise. They moved into the ranch house immediately after the wedding, and Clara quickly made it into a home. She arranged their few pieces of furniture, hung curtains she had sewn herself, and filled the shelves with books and small treasures. Ben built her a desk for the study where she could prepare her lessons, and he installed extra lamps so she could work even after dark. Life on the ranch was harder than Clara had anticipated, but also more rewarding. She continued teaching her students, now making the trip into the fort several times a week, while also helping Ben with the ranch's bookkeeping and correspondence. She learned to care for the chickens they had acquired, to tend the small vegetable garden she had planted near the house, and to cook meals for Ben and the two ranch hands who worked for them. Ben was tireless in his efforts to make the ranch succeed. He worked from before dawn until after dusk, mending fences, tending cattle, breaking horses, and managing the 100 other tasks that came with running a ranch. But no matter how tired he was, he always made time for Clara in the evenings. They would sit together on the porch, watching the sun set over their land and talk about their day. "How were the children today?" Ben would ask. "Wonderful." Little Tommy finally mastered his multiplication tables, and Sarah wrote a beautiful story about her family's journey from Missouri. "And how are you feeling? You look tired." "I am fine, just a long day." As the months passed, Clara began to suspect that she might be pregnant. She had been feeling nauseous in the mornings and noticed that her dresses were getting tighter around the waist. She wanted to be sure before she said anything to Ben, so she made a trip into town to speak with the doctor's wife, who served as the local midwife. Mrs. Patterson examined her and confirmed what Clara had suspected. "You are definitely with child, dear. I would say you are about 3 months along, which means you can expect the baby in late winter, probably February or early March." Clara was elated and terrified in equal measure. She wanted children desperately, but she also worried about how her leg would affect her pregnancy and ability to care for a baby. Mrs. Patterson seemed to sense her concerns. "Your leg will not affect your ability to carry or birth a child," she assured Clara. "You might be more uncomfortable than some women because of the extra weight on your weaker leg, but many women with physical limitations have healthy pregnancies and births. You just need to be sensible, rest when you need to, and do not try to do too much." That evening, Clara waited until after dinner to tell Ben her news. They were sitting on the porch as usual, and Clara was trying to find the right words. Finally, she just blurted it out. "Ben, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Ben went very still for a moment, processing the information. Then his face broke into the biggest smile Clara had ever seen, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably carried all the way to the fort. He scooped her up carefully, spinning her around before setting her back down gently. "We are having a baby," he repeated as if he could not quite believe it. "Clara, this is the most wonderful news. How are you feeling? Do you need anything? Should you even be teaching anymore? Maybe you should rest more." Clara laughed at his barrage of questions. "I am fine, truly. Mrs. Patterson says I can continue my normal activities as long as I do not overdo it. The baby should arrive in late winter." "A baby," Ben said again, shaking his head in wonder. He placed his hand gently on Clara's stomach, even though there was no visible sign of the pregnancy yet. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father speaking. I just want you to know that you are already so loved, and your mother and I cannot wait to meet you." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Clara did find the later months challenging as her belly grew and put additional strain on her weaker leg. She had to reduce her teaching schedule, which frustrated her, but Mrs. Harrison stepped in to help with her classes so that none of the children fell behind. Ben became increasingly protective, insisting that Clara rest often and hovering anxiously whenever she seemed tired. "I am pregnant, not dying," Clara reminded him gently when his fussing became too much. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time." "But none of those women were carrying my child," Ben countered. "And I am allowed to worry about you. It is my job as your husband." Their first child, a son they named Caleb William Brooks, arrived on a cold February night in 1880. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Ben, pacing anxiously in the other room, feared he might lose both his wife and child. But Clara was strong, and when the baby's first cry finally rang out, Ben nearly collapsed with relief. Mrs. Patterson brought the baby out wrapped in a blanket and placed him in Ben's arms. "You have a healthy son," she said with a tired smile. "And your wife is fine, just exhausted. She wants to see you." Ben entered the bedroom to find Clara propped up against the pillows, her hair damp with sweat and her face pale but radiant. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and placed Caleb in her arms. "He is perfect," Clara whispered, looking down at their son with awe. The baby had a shock of dark hair and a tiny, scrunched-up face. His eyes were closed, but his little mouth was working, searching for food. "He looks like you," Ben said, tracing one finger gently down the baby's cheek. "He looks like himself," Clara corrected, but she was smiling. "Ben, we made this. This little person who did not exist before, and now he is here and he is ours." "I love you so much," Ben said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for him. Thank you for everything." Caleb proved to be a good baby, healthy and strong. though he had a set of lungs that could wake the entire household when he was hungry or displeased. Clara took to motherhood naturally, though the early weeks were exhausting as she adjusted to the constant demands of a newborn while recovering from childbirth. Ben helped whenever he could, taking the baby at night so Clara could sleep, changing diapers and walking the floor when Caleb was fussy. As Caleb grew into a toddler, Clara gradually resumed her teaching, though on a reduced schedule that allowed her to spend most of her time with her son. Ben's ranch continued to prosper, and by the time Caleb was 2, they had expanded their herd and purchased more land. The 2 ranch hands who had started with Ben were still with them, loyal employees who had become friends. In 1882, Clara gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace Sarah Brooks. Grace was a quieter baby than Caleb had been, with her mother's hazel eyes and her father's dark hair. Caleb was fascinated by his new sister, and Ben had to constantly remind him to be gentle when he wanted to touch her. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch was successful enough that they were no longer struggling financially, though they still worked hard every day. Clara's teaching had expanded to include students who came directly to the ranch house, which allowed her to work while still being present for her children. Ben had become known throughout the territory as an honest rancher who treated his workers fairly and always paid his debts. In 1884, Clara gave birth to their 3rd child, another son they named Thomas Benjamin Brooks. And in 1887, their 4th and final child arrived, a daughter they named Emma Jane Brooks. By this time, their original small house had been expanded significantly to accommodate the growing family, with additional bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The children grew up healthy and happy, helping with chores around the ranch as soon as they were old enough. Caleb showed a natural aptitude for working with horses, just like his father. Grace was studious and loved to read, spending hours in the library Clara had created. Thomas was the adventurous one, always getting into mischief, and Emma was the peacemaker, sensitive to everyone's feelings. Through it all, Ben and Clara's love for each other only deepened. They had weathered the challenges of building a ranch from nothing, of raising children through childhood illnesses and accidents, of drought years and harsh winters. They had celebrated successes together and comforted each other through disappointments. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Ben surprised Clara with a special gift. He had commissioned a craftsman in Tucson to make a beautiful wooden sign for the entrance to their property. The sign read, "Brooks Ranch, founded on faith and love." "It is perfect," Clara said, standing with Ben's arm around her as they looked at the newly installed sign. Their 4 children played nearby, their laughter carrying on the warm evening air. "Thank you, Ben." "Thank you," Ben corrected, turning her to face him. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who asked you to dance. Thank you for believing in me when I had nothing but dreams. Thank you for giving me these beautiful children and making our house a home. Thank you for every single day of the past 10 years. They have been the best years of my life," Clara said honestly. "When I think about where I was before I met you, standing alone at that dance feeling sorry for myself, and where I am now, it feels like a miracle." "You were never someone to feel sorry for," Ben reminded her. "You were always extraordinary, I just helped you see it." "We helped each other see it," Clara said. "That is what partners do." They stood together, watching the sun set over the land they had built together, surrounded by the evidence of their love and hard work. Clara's limp was still there, a part of her that would never change, but it had long ago ceased to define her. She was a wife, a mother, a teacher, a rancher's partner, and so much more. The girl who had been mocked at a dance had become a woman who knew her worth, and it had all started with a cowboy who asked for every dance. As the years continued to pass, the Brooks family became an integral part of the Fort Bowie community. Clara's students went on to become teachers themselves, doctors, business people, and leaders in the growing territory. Ben's reputation as a fair and honest rancher spread, and he was often consulted by newer ranchers seeking advice. Their children grew into fine adults, each finding their own path while remaining close to their family and the ranch where they had been raised. Caleb took over the day-to-day management of the ranch when Ben's back started bothering him in his 50s, expanding the operation while maintaining his father's commitment to treating both animals and employees with respect. Grace married a teacher from Tucson and opened a school for girls, carrying on her mother's passion for education. Thomas became a deputy sheriff, using his adventurous nature to keep the peace in the growing territory. And Emma, the youngest, surprised everyone by becoming a veterinarian, one of the first women in Arizona to enter that profession. Ben and Clara lived to see their grandchildren born, 15 in total, each one adding to the legacy they had built. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1929, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. The original house had been expanded and renovated multiple times over the years, but the core structure remained, a testament to the foundation they had built together. At the celebration, Caleb stood up to give a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that love is not about perfection but about seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. Who showed us that hard work and integrity matter more than anything. And who proved that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and the courage to take chances on each other." Clara, now 70 years old, looked around at her children, grandchildren, and the life she and Ben had created together. Her legs still ached sometimes, especially in the cold weather, but it had never stopped her from living fully. She had taught hundreds of students, raised 4 wonderful children, helped build a successful ranch, and loved one man with her whole heart for 50 years. Ben, at 76, still had that same warm smile that had captured her heart at the dance so many decades ago. His hair was white now, his face lined with the years of sun and wind, but his blue eyes still sparkled when he looked at her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked quietly as the party continued around them. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Clara said. "How a single evening, a single moment of kindness, changed the entire course of my life." "I am the lucky one," Ben insisted, as he had countless times over their 50 years together. "I walked into that dance hoping to meet someone interesting, and I found my whole world." "We found each other," Clara corrected, taking his hand, "and that made all the difference." As the celebration continued into the evening, with fiddle music playing just like it had on that first magical night, Ben stood up and offered Clara his hand. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Brooks?" Clara smiled, that same smile that had lit up her face when he first asked her to dance all those years ago. "Every dance, Mr. Brooks. Always and forever, every dance." They moved onto the makeshift dance floor that had been set up in the yard, and their children and grandchildren cleared space for them. Clara's step was slower now, more careful, but Ben's arm was steady around her waist, supporting her just as he had every day for 50 years. They swayed together under the stars, in front of the house they had built, on the land they had tamed, surrounded by the family they had created. And in that moment, as the music played and the desert breeze carried the scent of sage and the sound of laughter, Clara thought about the girl she had been, standing alone at a dance and believing she would never have this. She thought about the courage it had taken to say yes when Ben offered his hand, to trust that someone could see past her limp to the person she was inside. She thought about all the years since, filled with joy and sorrow, triumph and struggle, but always, always with love at the center. The music ended, but Ben did not let go. He held Clara close, his cheek resting against her hair, and whispered the same words he had spoken to her 50 years earlier. "You are extraordinary, Clara Brooks, and I am the luckiest man alive." Clara closed her eyes and let herself sink into the embrace, into the warmth and security of 50 years of choosing each other every single day. She had learned that true love was not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about showing up, day after day, choosing to see the best in each other even when things were difficult. It was about building something together, brick by brick, dream by dream, until you looked around one day and realized you had created something beautiful and lasting. As they stood there together, surrounded by the evidence of their love, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single thing about her life. The accident that had given her a limp had also led her to this moment, to this man, to this family. It had taught her resilience and compassion, had shown her who she truly was beneath the surface. And most importantly, it had brought her to a dance where a cowboy with kind eyes and a generous heart had asked for every dance, and in doing so, had given her the world. Years later, when Clara was 85 and Ben was 91, they sat together on the porch of the ranch house on a warm spring evening. Their bodies were frail now, their movements slow, but their love remained as strong as ever. They held hands and watched the sunset, just as they had done thousands of times before, comfortable in the silence that comes from knowing someone so completely that words are often unnecessary. "Clara," Ben said suddenly, his voice soft but urgent. "Yes, my love. Thank you for saying yes. That night at the dance when I asked if I could have every dance. Thank you for taking a chance on me." Clara squeezed his hand gently. "Thank you for asking. Thank you for seeing me when others looked away. Thank you for every dance, every day, every moment we have shared. If I had it to do over again, knowing everything we would face, all the struggles and challenges, I would still choose you," Ben said. "Every single time I would choose you." "And I would choose you," Clara replied. "My cowboy with the kind heart who taught me that being seen and being loved are the greatest gifts anyone can give." They sat together as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two people who had built a life on faith and love, just as the sign at the entrance to their ranch proclaimed. They had started with nothing but hope and determination, and they had created a legacy that would extend far beyond their own lives. When Ben passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 months later, surrounded by his family, Clara held his hand and told him one last time how much she loved him. And when Clara followed him 6 months after that, her last words were about the dance, about the cowboy who had asked for every dance and had kept his promise for more than 70 years. Their children buried them side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple headstone that read, "Benjamin and Clara Brooks, partners in life and love, may they dance forever." And on warm evenings, when the wind blew just right across the Arizona desert, people swore they could hear fiddle music drifting from the direction of the ranch and see two figures waltzing under the stars, finally reunited and dancing for all eternity. The ranch continued to thrive under the management of their descendants, and the story of Ben and Clara became a family legend, passed down through the generations. It became a reminder that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, that kindness and courage can change lives, and that sometimes all it takes to transform someone's world is the simple question, "May I have this dance?" And so the legacy of that one magical evening in 1878, when a cowboy asked a girl with a limp to dance, and she said yes, continued to ripple through time, touching lives and inspiring hearts long after the original dancers had taken their final bow. It was a testament to the power of seeing beyond the surface, of choosing love over prejudice, of building something beautiful together brick by brick and day by day. It was proof that the greatest love stories are not about perfection, but about two imperfect people choosing each other completely, supporting each other fully, and dancing through life together no matter what obstacles they face. The Brooks Ranch stands to this day, still in the family, still bearing the sign that reads "Founded on Faith and Love." And every summer, the family gathers there for a celebration that includes a dance, honoring the memory of Ben and Clara and the love story that started it all. The young people hear the tale of how their great-great-grandparents met, how a cruel moment became the catalyst for a beautiful life, and how a simple act of kindness can echo through generations. And sometimes, when the music plays and couples take to the floor, an old-timer will look at a young man standing on the sidelines and say, "Go ask her to dance, son. You never know, she might be the one you spend your whole life dancing with." And they always tell him to remember the story of Ben and Clara Brooks, who proved that the best love stories start with a single brave question and a courageous answer. And that true partnership means giving each other every dance, not just for one night, but for a lifetime and beyond.